Welcome to the Transfer Exchange Show. I'm your host, Kieran Stewart. I've said this about 25 times today, and this will be the last time I say this tonight. But it's the best one. I'm sorry, it's the best one. We've got Nathan Ellington on and ex-Man United player Ben Thornley. How you doing, Ben?
I'm very well, thanks, guys. How's yourselves?
I'm good. Thank you for coming on.
I'm good. As always,
So
the last result.
He's always good.
Yeah.
I'm not still talking about that.
It happens. It could have been worse. So Ben, former Man United player. I see your book. Tell us a little bit about the book and what it's about.
To be honest, it wasn't anything that was ever on my radar. I'll be honest with you, but there was a guy, because I travel regularly between Manchester and London, so I go through Euston. There was a guy there who saw me travelling through Euston Station a few years ago, and he started to follow Man United when the class of '92 were prominent. With the likes of Bex and Gary Neville, Scholesy, Nicky Butt, all the like. And he actually got in touch with me via the club. He didn't actually approach me in the station. He got in touch with me via the club and asked me would I meet him, because there was a couple of things that he wanted me to sign. So I met him outside Euston Station, and then as I walked away, about half an hour later, I got a phone call, and he said, "Listen, I do a little bit of writing for my job. Have you ever thought about writing a book?" And my immediate reaction was no, not at all. I mean, I'm not a household name by any stretch, and obviously my career at Manchester United was cut short. So it would be literally like, I would be a failure at Man United. So why would anybody be interested? But the way that he sold it to me was that because of the players that I played with, and because at the time I was sort of held in quite high esteem by these players that became worldwide names, he thought it was quite an interesting angle, and the story would be quite interesting to people, as well as a little bit of a heartwarming lesson as to what can happen and what is just around the corner, and how you deal with a major setback.
Yeah, do you know what? I wouldn't even say it just needs to be a book. That's something that your story is not maybe such because of your name, but your story is a story that people would want to hear. It doesn't have to come from a household name. It doesn't have to be. Most people would think it would need to come from the biggest names in the world, but you've got a story to tell. So, and people want to listen. So, and that's the most important thing. I used to watch all sorts of football programs. Whether it's, I remember watching the Chelsea program with Jody Morris going through the youth ranks and seeing players that didn't make it there. And it's all part of the journey. It's all part of the story. So you don't have to be Beckham to sell a book, mate. You've got.
It helps.
Yeah, it does help, but I'm sure you've got some stories to tell in that book.
Yeah, well, I grew up, didn't I? I grew up supporting United, so when I was like 5, 6, 7, and getting to the a bit older, that's when I was getting them Panini books and looking at obviously yourself, Ben, and all the other players. I remember seeing I think he was a goalkeeper, and all the other players that were coming up as well at the time. So it's obviously nice to actually speak to you for the first time. Pleasure,
mate. Not a problem. You too.
Yeah. Obviously, your career was kind of cut short due to a absolute horrific injury in a game against Blackburn, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
I saw the challenge. Wow. It was like knee high. So yeah, it was. And even back then, that was still regarded as an awful challenge. How did you deal with that at the time? That must have been like depressing. That must have been soul destroying.
Yeah, I think I went through times subsequently where both those turns of phrase definitely sprung to mind. Those sites are difficult, and Nathan will tell you that anytime you have an injury, it does just it just sends you to a little bit of a dark place, especially if it's a long-term one. But when you receive one at such an early age, you just and playing football is all all you've ever wanted to do. You don't really know which way to turn, and obviously I mean, I was playing in the game, and 70 minutes had gone by, and I was absolutely loving it. I was an 18-year-old kid, and I knew that there was a great chance that I'd be playing in the FA Cup semi-final on the Sunday against Oldham Athletic. But I wasn't looking that far ahead. I was just enjoying what I was doing at that particular moment, and I suppose that's a little bit of over exuberance on my part, and a little bit of naivety as well, because as a kid, you're going out there, you're getting paid to play football, and when you're enjoying it, you just don't realise what's around the corner. And then obviously the injury happened, and it quickly became very, very apparent that it was serious. And then obviously your mind does start to wander about whether you will ever not play for Man United, but whether you will ever play football again with the amount of damage that was caused by the tackle. So yeah, it does take you to some distant places. And listen, I've always, people have asked me this question for years and years and years, and no matter what happened to me, the lads that I grew up with, I mean, they were always going to be wonderful footballers. So there's no bitterness or envy. Well, obviously there's a little bit of envy because I'd love to have been there, but there's no bitterness and certainly no anger, because these lads were terrific players that were at a great club that had the best coaches and had the best manager, and they were prepared to listen and put the work in. And when when you've got that sort of a blend, then you're going to get success, and that's exactly what they brought to Manchester United. But that wasn't to happen for me. I was the unfortunate one, if you like, that did receive a really, really bad injury. But listen, you are playing in a contact sport, and you do always run the risk every single day, whether it's in training or in matches, of doing something that is going to curtail or kill your career. Fortunately, it didn't kill my career, but it certainly curtailed it. There's no two ways about it. I think that there were times when I fell out of love with the game along the way. Times when I loved it, even after Manchester United. There were some great times with some great clubs and met some great people. But yeah, I would be lying if I said that I didn't look back and think, what I might have been able to achieve had the injury not occurred. But that being said, I've never let it ruin friendships, family life, anything like that, because it will just eat you up from the inside if you keep looking back and let your anger turn to bitterness. I'm very, very grateful for the family that I've got, for the friends that I've got, and for the job that I now do. And yeah, I have no regrets at all.
No. So there's a lot of nice things said about you, Ben, after you left Manchester United. I mean, even to this day, how good, and I mean, they was even saying you would have been as good as Ryan Giggs. Does that make you feel good when you hear them things, or does it make you feel like I could have? How does it play?
I suppose it's always probably quite humbling now when people would talk about me in the same breath as Paul Scholes and Ryan Giggs and all the other lads that were coming through at that time. But I think the truth of the matter is that I was certainly in amongst that. I mean, you cannot know and you can't tell how your career is going to go. Yeah, I mean, those lads went right the way to the top, all played for the countries, so many occasions. Three of the lads, Giggsy, Gaz and Scholesy, stayed with the club for right the way through. You just can't know. So yeah, I mean, it's a nice thing to hear. But the bottom line is that it never happened. And as much as it would have been great for me to measure myself against players like that, I knew instantaneously that when I came back from that injury, that was just never going to happen. So I had to adjust my sights and concentrate on what I could be good at. Because and again, Nathan will tell you, when you're talking about competing at that elite level, it's
little
very,
details,
very small margins.
Yeah.
And when you haven't got that anymore, you have to hold your hands up.
Yeah.
You know what? I share the same kind of feeling. It's like that feeling of how would it have gone? And you never know. You'll never know. Like when I left Wigan, we got to the Premiership and everyone was talking about me and Jason Roberts playing in the Premiership together and what we'd be able to do. And I ended up moving for reasons I didn't want to, but I ended up moving. And then now I look back in my career. That's the one thing in my career that I look back and I say, I wonder what would have happened if that happened. I really wish I could just turn back time and play out them seasons again and make that happen. So probably the same with you, Ben. That you're probably thinking, if I just didn't have that injury at that time, how would it have panned out? I really wish I would have just seen in a crystal ball, like how would it have actually panned out? Just to know. And that's, there's always going to be that feeling. I feel a little bit of pain, but at the same time, I'm happy because I've had a good career. I enjoyed it. And that's really the best part of it is you're never going to achieve the best of every single part, you know, that you could ever have done as a football player. So there's always going to be bits that you're going to be upset about. But yeah, it must hurt, I guess.
Yeah, from time to time it does. But like I said earlier, you know, I'm very fortunate that I've got a great relationship with the club. You know, I'm back working there now. Unfortunately, match day hospitality is out the window as well, we know. But I'm loving doing the stuff for MUTV. It's fantastic. And you know, I think that as good as it would be to be remembered, certainly by, you know, the hardcore Man United fans that do remember us coming through as kids and have had a really strong opinion about what sort of a player I may have been. I think for me now at 45 years of age, it's important, and you've just said it, Steve, is that people, when they speak my name, they actually, you know, say to me that, or say about me that, you know, I'm all right and I'm a decent person. I think that's more important now than anything.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I was just going to say, he said he was a decent person. I was speaking to Rob. I know Rob from ESPN. He's the Man United correspondent, and he said he sees you all the time, Ben, at Manchester United, and he said, "What a great fella you are! What a lovely fella you are!" And you know, that's something on its own, isn't it? When someone says them things about you.
Yeah, I think they certainly, as you know, as nice and as good as it would have been to remembered as a tremendous footballer, that, you know, that wasn't the case. It might have been, as you know, Nathan's just been explaining there, that you never know how it might have panned out. You know, the most important thing now is that when people meet you, that, you know, they have decent things and good things to say about you, because you never know who you're going to come across in this game. And like you said, you just spoke to Rob, and it's important not to burn your bridges.
So what is it that you're doing at Man United now then?
Match day hospitality, is it?
Yeah, well, I mean, when that's on, yeah, I got invited back to do the match day hospitality the night Nani got sent off against Real Madrid in Sir Alex's last season.
What a game that was as well.
Yeah, I know. So this would have been, obviously this would have been my seventh season doing that, but unfortunately it's not happened. But I've been very lucky that in the time that I've been doing the match day hospitality, I've become more and more involved doing the commentary for MUTV. So I've been really lucky that since the restart in June, and I've been busy doing the commentary. I went over to Germany to finish off the Europa League, and then started this season. I do all the home and away games, and I also do the under 23s as well when the two teams don't clash. So I'm really lucky that A, I get to see the games, and B, you know, I'm doing a job that I love for a club that I love.
Yeah, I was going to say, it must be good seeing the next batch of youngsters come through as well and commentating on that.
Yeah, it's always something that I keep an eye on. I mean, unfortunately, we haven't played any FA Youth Cup games yet because the competition's been put on hold for a spell. But that's always, because we won it, that's always been something that I've been really interested to keep an eye on. It's difficult to keep an eye on the whole thing, but you do want to, you know, at least glean from the players that are coming through and how they're doing. I mean, our under 23s beat Liverpool 6-3 last night. Was it on Saturday? And I couldn't do the game because I was at the Emirates and the two clashed. But I did watch the previous game when we played Liverpool at home, and after 20 minutes we were 4-0 down. So, and it can be a bit soul destroying that because we've only got a young side, but we've got a tremendous manager in the under-23s, and we've got some really good players coming through.
Really good players.
Yeah, Ted and Mengi, who was the youth team captain last year, he's just gone and joined Wayne Rooney on loan at Derby for the rest of the season.
Yeah,
he will be one to watch. Already made his debut, and there are others besides as well. And it's like I said, for an under-23s, it's a very, very young team. But Neil Wood and Nicky Butt have done a brilliant job in coercing these teenagers. They are, some of them, and they're getting some really, really good results. And I love to see players being promoted from within.
Yeah.
So, I've got a quick question on this. Ben, have you seen in the flesh yet, Diallo?
I haven't, because that was his first game.
Everyone wants to see Diallo. Everyone wants to see him.
I can't wait.
I've watched a few of his games in the youth level at Atalanta. Sorry, he's a serious talent. So I want to see what he can do in the Man United shirt, even at youth level. Even at youth level, I just want to see.
He did really well last game, that's for sure. I saw the highlights of every touch he made and that, so that really looked good.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see this guy come.
Pellistri's another one, isn't he? Facundo Pellistri. I mean, he's gone off to Alves, but he looks pretty good as well.
Yeah, it took him about 3 or 4 games to get going, but once he did, you could see a real prestigious talent in there. He wasn't afraid to run at people. He had good energy levels for somebody that hadn't played a lot of football. And then he started scoring goals as well. And I think this move to Alaves could just sort of, because his English is good, so it's not, they haven't got a worry about him integrating. I think it's just now getting him to somewhere where he can speak the language. And be even more comfortable.
Just be comfortable. That's it.
Yeah. I don't think it's a bad move at all because he was starting to perform really well for our under-23s, and obviously they've had a chat and thought that this might be a way of moving into the next level.
Have you seen much of that Joe Hugo as well? He's forward from Sunderland. They got him.
Yeah, he did really well, Joe, when he first came in. Went through a bit of a barren spell, and then, like I said, I couldn't do the commentary on Saturday against Liverpool, and he scored 4. He scored 4.
He's a big kid as well.
Too, so I mean, he's a proper traditional centre forward. He doesn't start moving out wide. He holds his position. He's a number 9. He wants to be a number 9, and he gets himself in the box. But he's done really well since he's come in.
No, it's really good that you're sort of getting involved in that, and sort of you can see just by the look in your eye when you're talking about it, you've got that love for it. Did you never want to sort of get involved in the coaching side of things?
No, I did a couple of my coaching badges, but I was always more in tune with the media side of it.
Yeah.
So that was something that I enjoyed and tried to concentrate on. And at the moment, it's coming off for me. So even though the coaching was a sort of natural progression for a footballer to go into, I think you're seeing a little bit more these days that ex-players are moving more into the sort of punditry and present. I mean, Jermaine Jenis is presenting the bloody one show.
It's good. He's good. You know what? He done a documentary on knife crime, and it was brilliant. And that was it. After that, he's taken off. No, he's done really well.
He has
Ben.
Really
so
well,
you never know if it comes up.
Don't forget about us if you're on the one show. I've got a question from one of the fans, big Man United fan. He says, who was a bigger influence on yourself? Was it Alex Ferguson or was it Eric Harrison?
Yeah, I knew those were the 2 names that were going to come up. I mean, I would probably have to say, because I spent more time with him, it would be Eric.
Okay.
It would be Eric. I mean, they were very, very similar in they were proper old school. They were cut from the same cloth. They both had the same values. Eric was a fantastic bloke. I mean, he was tough like Sir Alex, but he was also incredibly fair. And he didn't hold a grudge either. I mean, you could get an absolute rollicking on a Saturday, and by Monday morning when you were back in to train again, it would all be forgotten. That there was no hangovers. He was really fair like that. But I think that the number of chats that we had, not just myself, but you ask anybody who grew up in my era, Eric's door was always open. And because obviously the other lads progressed into the first team, and their involvement with Sir Alex on a day-to-day basis would have been a lot more than mine. So from that aspect, I would probably have to say it would be Eric Harrison. But that's not to say that I didn't go into Sir Alex's office on many an occasion. And he helped me through some very, very difficult times, but he was also incredibly fair with me and enabled me to go on and try and have a career elsewhere. So they both held in such high esteem, but if I had to choose one, it would have to be Eric, who had the biggest influence, because it was him that I spent the most time with.
Yeah, you said that Alex Ferguson could one day blast you, and then the following Monday it was like nothing had happened, and it was like just natural again. Do you feel that some managers now struggle with that? Because I seem to see some managers, you hear about they're not talking to a player, or they've excluded certain players from the team for whatever reason. Do you think that that's something that some managers nowadays can't sort of pick up on?
It seems to be. You do hear of day in, day out, week in, week out of players that have been left out in the cold. I mean, there'll be probably numerous names that spring to mention, but I think immediately of somebody like Dele Alli at Spurs.
Yeah.
Under Jose Mourinho is just absolutely not getting a look in, and you wouldn't mind if Spurs were flying high. And this would be a good time, if you want, to mention the 6-1 drubbing the game was at Old Trafford. But you know what? At the moment, they're just not. I watched them against Liverpool, and as well as Liverpool played, Spurs were just never turned up.
Yeah,
non-existent, and they just needed that little spark. Yeah. And I thought that Dele Alli, and not just in that game, they've obviously had a downturn. They lost again yesterday to Brighton?
Brighton, yeah.
Yeah, 1-0.
And these, I didn't see that game, but I mean, these are the games that you would expect Spurs to be brushing teams aside if they've got any aspirations. And yet Dele Alli seems to be on the periphery, and obviously he went through a bit of a barren spell himself. I don't think there's any footballer on the planet that has gone through season after season after season without having a dip in form. But I think that I'm not sure that he believes in him, Jose Mourinho. Yeah, and I saw him do that with Luke Shaw at Manchester United as well. He was on the verge of ridiculing him publicly, Luke Shaw. And I think that the way Luke Shaw has come back to produce some of the performances that he's giving at this moment in time, I think that shows a lot for Luke Shaw's mental capacity and his character. So yeah, I managers. I realise that players have gotten bigger in terms of the money in the game and the branding and everything else. But I just think that the manager basically should be in charge. I do think the manager should be in charge, but there has to be a little bit of a meeting in the middle when it comes to players that are being paid a lot of money and are just being completely isolated and left out. I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I was thinking. You say Jose Mourinho, and that's definitely one. I was thinking of Frank Lampard as well. Like, there's quite a few players that have now come back into the Chelsea squad who wasn't playing recently, and Chelsea have picked up on results. And it just feels like did it get to a point where you haven't put aside the team, and it's kind of like you're making a point here, and it looks like it could have maybe cost him his job in the end, because then you've lost the dressing room at that point. So it's a bit of a tough one.
When you was playing with Beckham and Scholes, and you was in that, you was growing up together, you was playing together. Did you know that there was something special coming, Ben?
It was difficult to tell to start with. I mean, it's only when before we got to the club, you're only used to seeing these lads sporadically. I mean, the local lads like Scholesy and Nicky and Gary Neville, I played against them all the time for, Salford Boys, Bury, Greater Manchester County, whatever. But you only actually saw them in the holidays. It wasn't until probably about 2 or 3 months in, when we'd won a tournament over in Ireland at the end of our first pre-season, and we started to put some results together in the A and B teams as they were then, and then we were drawn in the FA Youth Cup against Sunderland, which was a particularly difficult a team that had Mickey Gray in it. Did you play with Mickey Gray, Nathan?
No.
You never played with him? No. Jason will have done at Blackburn, I would have thought.
Yeah, he did.
Possible. Anyway,
Mickey
Mickey
was
in the team.
I don't remember Mickey Gray, no.
Sutherland,
the Mickey,
England,
another
Talkspell.
yeah, it definitely wouldn't have been. Yeah, I did.
He was the guy who sadly missed the penalty, wasn't he?
Yeah.
That's right. In the Charlton Sunderland final in '98, he was on who missed the penalty. The Clive Mendonca final, as you remember it.
Clive Mendonca final.
Yeah, but they had a very, very good side, Sunderland, and it was tough. And I all remember was I think we went in 2-1 at half time, and we came back out for the second half, and the pitch was white. It had snowed for 15 minutes just as we'd gone into the tunnel. We had to change the ball, but we came away and we'd won that game 4-2. And I think it was then when we realised that maybe, even though it was only as you would call it, the second round, that we played so well in that second half against a very, very good side with some good players, that we actually probably felt that there was a good chance that with the lads that we had in this team, we might be able to win the national trophy. And of course, the season went on and we beat some great sides. We ended up beating Spurs in the semi-final, which was a huge game. In our first season, Giggsy could still play, so he came in sporadically, and he came in for one game at Old Trafford in the semi-final. They had like Nicky Barmby, Sol Campbell was playing for them, and they had Andy Turner. They had a really, really top team. And after 20 minutes, Nicky Barmby was sent off, and we won the first leg 3-0, and it was just a formality after that. And the final was a lot easier than the semi, a lot easier. And it although we never got complacent because we weren't allowed to, I think there was always that little undercurrent that, do you know what, we've got a real chance of winning this. And it's weird because even though all these players are talked about, David Beckham, for example, only came into the team at the semi-final stage. He hadn't played 1 minute, or not 1 minute, but he hadn't started a game up to that point. It was Keith Gillespie, and Keith got injured.
He was quality.
Brilliant Keith. And he got injured in the quarter-final against, I think it was Tranmere, and he couldn't play the semi, and Bex came in and took his place and played the 2 semis and the 2 finals. And Paul Scholes never played 1 minute. Never played 1 minute of our FA Youth Cup. That's what people don't realise. It was only the second year that...
and he was up front, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he was just...
Up front as a striker.
The transformation of Scholesy between our first year apprentice and our second year apprentice year was just astronomical.
Wow!
He just looked a completely different player, totally different player, and he just went from strength to strength after that.
What do you think it was that turned the screw for him?
Well,
was it a position change or what?
No, it wasn't, Nathan. It was well documented that Scholesy always felt as though when he arrived, there were players that were physically in better shape than he was. By his own admission, he probably not sort of done what he really needed to do in preparation to join a professional outfit. And I think that quickly became apparent to him, the likes of myself and Gaz and Nicky. But he actually said, they were like men, and there was something that I really needed to do. I needed to sort my lifestyle out. And whatever he did over that summer, and I'm not speaking out of turn here. I mean, I've spoken to Scholesy on numerous occasions about this and been on forums with him when people have asked him this. And it is sort of pretty much common knowledge that he went away that summer, he sorted out his whole lifestyle, and he came back as a 17-year-old going on to an 18-year-old, and his football let it do the talking. He was absolutely magnificent, and that was the start of the footballer that blossomed into the best player that I've ever had the privilege of playing with.
Yeah, best midfield player I've seen.
Who was the best player in that youth team that didn't get into the first team, that didn't make it through? Who you thought could have really made it through?
Do you know what? I think there was plenty of us that made our debuts. I'm not sure that of names that people will remember. Robbie Savage, I don't think ever played a first team game at Man United.
Yeah, I don't think he did. No, he didn't.
But obviously, he went on and had a tremendous career once he left there.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Casper, like myself, he was.
Chris Casper, good player.
Yeah, I remember him. Yeah,
he was. He went off to Reading, and sadly his career was cut short by injury. But he did, I'm sure, make his debut. There were very few people. Remember John O'Kane?
Yeah, John O'Kane.
Yeah.
I remember all these players.
Yeah, I remember John O'Kane. My brother's at the posters, so he knew all the players, so I had to learn all the players as well. That's why I know when Steve was like Ben Thornley, I was like, Ben Thornley, are you serious? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Hello, poster on the wall. Yeah, no, it's quality. That's quality. Yeah, man. That was one of another Man United. In fact, I say it's another Man United. It's the same Man United fan who is desperate to keep on asking you questions. Keep them coming in. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Did you play with? Was Nicky Butt part of that little?
Nicky was, yeah. I was lucky enough to play with Nicky for when we were growing up for Greater Manchester County. I was representing Salford and he was Manchester Boys, and we played central. When I was a young kid, I played as a midfielder, and me and him played centre midfield together. Absolutely terrific player and vastly underrated, Nicky. I mean, as brilliant as a career as he did have, he was an absolutely sensational player to play with, and as tough as they come. Trust me, he was as tough as they come.
There was that little patch where I think everyone realised how good Nicky Butt was. It was like Nicky Butt was just one of the players amongst them, because it was like Beckham, Scholes, Giggs, and Butt. But then there was this time at England where it was like Butt really turned it on, and I think it was like
World Cup.
I think it was like a season before he left Man United, or 2 seasons before he left Man United.
Always.
And it was like, but he really, really had a good season. He was scoring goals. He was creating. He just looked like he could play somewhere like Spain or something like that. And then he left. He went to Newcastle, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He was an absolutely terrific player, Nick. And you're right. He actually won England's Player of the Tournament for the 2002 World Cup in Japan. He was absolutely brilliant. He really was. Like I said, not vastly underrated. That's not fair. But I think that until you actually play with somebody like Nicky, you don't realise what an incredible, like Nathan said, what an incredible job he did week in, week out. Brilliant.
I think the players always said about Nicky Butt, Beckham, Scholes, and Giggs. Every time you speak to them, they always mention Nicky Butt. Always mention what a great, good player he was, what a great player he was.
Yeah, he was.
So you went on to play for Huddersfield and Aberdeen. How was those moves?
The Huddersfield one, I'd already been on loan there, albeit under a different manager. I'd been on loan there at for the 95-96 season. I had 6 months towards the end of from January to May of 96 under Brian Horton, who's obviously managed Manchester City as well. And I actually thought to myself, do you know what? I really do fancy this. I played really well for 6 months, and it was something that I needed. And that got me England recognition. I played in the Toulon tournament at the end of that season, which was brilliant for me. I played with Bex, actually. He played in that as well. And the manager called me back and said, how's it gone? Blah, blah, blah. And I'd really enjoyed myself. I had. And he said, they've put a bid in and they want to take you there permanently. And I was just waiting for what the follow-up was going to be from him. And he said, but I think you should stay here for another couple of years. And when you've got Sir Alex Ferguson sitting in front of you, telling you what he thinks you should do, then and I said it in my book actually, that at that particular time at the end of the 95-96 season, I actually let my heart rule my head, really, because I should have gone. I should have gone. I should have pushed it. I know he didn't want me to go, at that time, but nothing was really going to change for me after that.
Yeah.
And I just felt as though between 96 and 98, I sort of wasted a couple of years. I didn't waste them in terms of, you know, I didn't work and what have you, but I wasn't actually achieving anything by, you know, at 23, 24 years of age. I was still playing in the reserves, if you like, at United. And I'd had that taste of first team football, and that had got me recognition from the country. And I just felt as though I'd gone on the up for 6 months, and then for 2 years I was sliding back down again. And I didn't want to get to a phase where I was starting to fall out of love with it. But to be fair to the manager, at the end of the 97-98 season, I went to him again and I said, listen, on this occasion, and he completely understood. And he thanked me for everything. And even though it was a new managerial team at Huddersfield, they were still really keen to sign me. And it was Terry Yoreth,
Gary Yoreth, Sheffield Wednesday,
and Peter Jackson, who was a long time hero of Huddersfield Town, who played a lot of games for them. So yeah, I went there and thoroughly enjoyed myself. The only problem was that I played under 3 different managers. You know, Steve Bruce took over in the 2nd year, and then Lou Macari took over with Joe Jordan in my 3rd year. And in between times, there'd been a takeover. A multi-millionaire had come in, which was why Peter Jackson and Terry Yoreth were released of their contracts at the end of the first season, because they really wanted to bring in a big name as a manager, which was Steve Bruce, thus to attract the players to get Huddersfield into the Premier League, which was the aim of this new owner. Unfortunately, as close as we got on 1 or 2 occasions, it never happened. Oh, sorry, on 1 occasion. And then the chairman withdrew his money, and that was that. And they had players there that were on big money, on big contracts, and we weren't getting the results. And you know, when we're not getting the results, as Nathan will tell you, that the fan base drops a little bit, especially at a club like Huddersfield, and it becomes difficult to sustain. So they got rid of Steve Bruce after a run of really poor results at the start of my 3rd year. And then they brought in Lou Macari, who was already at the club, and he brought in Joe Jordan, and unfortunately couldn't stop them from getting relegated. I left at the end of that season to go to Aberdeen, and then they were relegated again. And from being so close to being in the playoffs to go into the Premier League at one stage, they were within the space of 3 years, they were in the bottom tier of English football.
And that's a shock.
Incredibly well. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. But it is a great club, and I'm very, very fond. And there's a lot of people, not a lot, but quite a few people that when I've been there on my travels for MUTV, when they've been in the Premier League or we played them in the cup, it is there's a few people there that I'm still really, really fond of, and I think it's a terrific club, and I will never wish them anything but all the best at Huddersfield. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time there.
That's good. That's good. And then up to Aberdeen in Scotland. How was that move?
Probably one that I enjoyed, but a little bit too much for the wrong flavour. It was the first time that I'd been away from home. In terms of I had to move away from home. You know, I had to live by myself because it's the northeast of Scotland, and it is a fabulous city, but it is small. Really small.
Everyone knows your name.
Exactly. Everybody knows who you are. Everybody knows where you are, which is more of a worry. And to be honest, for the first 6 months of being up there, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. The team were doing well. I was doing well. I scored on my home debut. You know, things couldn't have gone any better considering I was by myself. I didn't have any friends. I had friends, but friends that I'd made through the club. But no family up there, only when they could fly up and come and watch me on the few weekends that they did do that. But then all of a sudden, at the turn of the year, the manager stopped picking me, and I couldn't understand it. You know, there wasn't any reason for it, and instead of sort of knuckling down, I took advantage of the situation that there wasn't anybody breathing down my neck to tell me that I should be doing this, you should be doing that. And I would always find myself someone to go out with or somebody to spend time with. And I was doing that way too often, and it affected me. It affected me because I dragged myself out of bed. I'd go training, and then I'd have the rest of the day to myself. And somebody would ring me up, or do you want to do this tonight? Do you want to do that tonight? And I'd find myself in a bit of a horrible cycle where I'm waking up in the morning feeling a bit groggy, going out and getting it all out of my system by training, and then doing exactly the same thing again, and then waiting for the weekend and doing it twice as hard when I knew that I was allowed to do it with the rest of the lads that had come back from a game or we played at home and we were meeting in the town. So yeah, I did enjoy my time up there. I wasn't as professional anywhere near as I should have been. And I was still only 27, 28 at this time. And I still had plenty of decent years in front of me. And I knuckled down and I worked really hard. I never got myself back into the fold, but I went to see the manager and I just said, listen, Christmas time, the start of a new window in January, can I move away from here? And he said, yeah. And that was it.
And then where did you go after that?
I went to Blackpool.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to Blackpool, and that was a bad move for me because I didn't realise how poorly run a club it was at the time. Yeah. It was going through dealings at the top with the Oystons, and I mean, there was obviously more to it than the football involved. There was external influences. And it was we had Steve McMahon as the manager, and he was hardly ever there. And we, you say that Blackpool is place, it was ideal because it's a place where people go on their holidays, and it was like an holiday football club. You played a game on the Saturday, you weren't in again till the Tuesday, you had the Wednesday off, and then you come in on the Thursday and the Friday and play again Saturday. And it was
That's unbelievable.
Wow.
I know, and you wouldn't actually see Steve McMahon because if we had a home game, there was a flight from Blackpool Airport to Spain, literally leaving about an hour after the final whistle had gone, and he'd be on it, and we wouldn't see him because he had a place in Spain. We wouldn't see him again until maybe the Thursday or the Friday.
Wow.
And Mark Seagraves, who played for Bolton, who was a great bloke. Mark Seagraves, the assistant, he would pretty much take all the training up until the point that Steve McMahon came back. Yeah, it wasn't a well-run club, and I didn't. Of all the clubs that I've ever played for, and that's including non-league, I probably enjoyed myself there the least.
Yeah. So how long was you there for?
I was only there 6 months. And
then you knew you had to get out.
Oh yeah, I left at the end of this. I left Aberdeen in the December, and I played. Funnily enough, the first game that I played, I came on a sub for Blackpool against Huddersfield, and settled the goal for Blackpool. So
wow!
Strange feeling. But it was another sort of 3 or 4 games down the line that Steve McMahon decided to give me my debut, and I didn't really understand why when he spoke to me, why he was so desperate to get me in, because he needed a wide player to put crosses in. And then for 5 games, he only used me, I think 2, maybe 3 times from the bench. I didn't actually start a game, and I wouldn't mind if they were winning matches, but they weren't. So the writing was on the wall a little bit for me, and I didn't really enjoy it, I must admit.
Yeah. What's this question here?
Yeah, I've just got a question here. I think I know the answer because I think Ben's already answered it. But it's who was the best player you played with, Ben?
Yeah, I knew that was coming. Yeah. I mean, do you know what? I have been really fortunate in terms of the players from when I was a kid that I've managed to share a field. I mean, Brian Robson was always my hero growing up. Ever since he scored that goal against France in the 1982 World Cup after 27 seconds, and that was always something I wanted to do. And watching him do that, and then being in the same building and then sharing the same pitch was brilliant for me because he was somebody that I idolised when I was a kid. I played in the game, an iconic game when Eric Cantona scored that chip against
Sunderland.
Oh, what?
Yeah. The arms came out.
Put his hands out. Yeah.
Exactly. Watching somebody like that. Similarly, the flip side to that was I also played in the game at Old Trafford in '98 when Arsenal bridged that gap of 12 points and Mark Overmars scored at Old Trafford and beat us 1-0.
Was you playing in that game?
I played in that game as well, yeah.
I remember
so there was some, you know what I mean? There was some highs, but obviously there's some lows as well. And I didn't play that many games, so for me to even have that in my collection is of such a small amount of games was brilliant. But I was very fortunate. I mean, Giggsy I played with, you know, when we were like 10, 11 years old. And then the lads that I was lucky enough to play with in the class of '92. So I've been very fortunate, very fortunate.
So you would say
Scholes is the best.
So you would say that Brian Robson was like the one was your biggest influence as a footballer, or that you took influence from?
Yeah.
And how did your game change after your injury? What did you have to do? Did you have to what did you do to adapt your game, to adapt your style? Because what did you lose? Your pace.
Yeah, I mean, it was like I mentioned before, it's fine margins. And whereas, you know, I worked really, really hard on my speed, you're always going to be in a situation. And not only that, but because I've been out for a while, my body shape changed as well. I mean, before my injury, there was nothing of me. You know what I mean? I wasn't carrying any weight whatsoever. But I think that was a little bit of a difference as well. So not only did I have to contend with the fact that I had an injury, but I also then started to have a little bit of a problem where I needed to be careful with my diet as well. So it was doubly for me. I mean, you see some players that come back from long-term injuries and they're actually in better shape than they were before the injury occurred. Roy Keane was definitely one of those. Alex Shearer, another one, frightening. I wasn't like that. I mean, I'm only small anyway, so any sort of you know, little bit of weight that you had, it is very, very noticeable. So that was something else that I had to work on. So I worked extremely hard on trying to keep that down and obviously on my speed. So as much as I didn't really adapt my game that much, I think there was a lot more movement from right foot to left foot rather than, you know, a full on, I'm going to push the ball 10, 15, 20 yards and we're going to have a race as a fullback. That wasn't really my game anyway, but it certainly was less so after that. When I spoke about Keith Gillespie, he was absolutely magnificent at that. I mean, if you get him to come inside on his left foot, I mean, you may as well give him, I don't know, snooker cue or something. Yeah. But if you stick him on his right foot and if you square him up, he will shove that ball and he's gone before you can get near him. We complemented each other because we were different types of wingers. He was about explosive pace, and I was able to use both feet, if you like, and sort of bamboozle a fullback into not knowing which way I was going to go. It still would have helped if I could have kept my speed, though.
Yeah.
Did you ever speak to the guy who done your tackle?
Never spoke to him. No, I never spoke to him since. No, never spoke to him. I think I appreciate how difficult that probably would have been for him, whether he would have meant it or whether he didn't. I think what was most disappointing about the whole episode was that I never got an apology from Blackburn Rovers. That was the most hurtful thing.
Yeah, it's not good at all, is it?
No.
Yes. Yeah, that's not good. It's not good. Bloody hell. Yeah. Ben, it's the time is up. It's been an absolutely brilliant interview. It's not even been like an interview. It just feels like we've had a chat.
Conversation, isn't it?
Honestly,
it's always interesting.
Honestly, it was just like we've had a chat. Thank you very much for coming on. If ever you want to come onto a podcast to chat about Man United, to chat about anything, to sell your book, to do whatever, mate, you're feel free to come on. Anytime.
I've read Ben's book, and I'll tell you, if people are watching that, it's a fantastic read, and you don't have to be a Manchester United supporter to read it. It's called Tackled, Class of '92. I'm halfway through it, and believe me, people should buy it and watch it. It's a great book. really interesting book.
Very kind of you, Steve. And listen, the door swings both ways. If anything I can ever do for you, then please don't hesitate to get in touch. But it was a pleasure to meet you all, Nathan, Steve.
You too, Ben.
You too, Ben.
Thank you very much, Ben.
At the ground one day.
Cheers, Ben.
I
certainly
come to the
hope so,
game
mate. Yeah.
often, so.
All right.
See you soon.
All right, take care, mate.
guys.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, what a brilliant show. Loved that. Absolutely loved that. Oh, do you know what? I kept on catching myself like that.
Yeah, I noticed.
And then it went quiet. I was thinking, is no one going to ask a question? And I was thinking, oh, yeah, that's going to be me.
Crazy. Yeah, ask him this, ask him that. Can you ask him this? I've never known that before. It's crazy.
It was brilliant. I love that.
Great to know the information like that. You're never going to know that, are you, unless you speak to someone that's been in and around it. So it's really
and I'm probably going to come up with loads and loads of questions in my head once everyone.
And he means that when he said like anything you can do, he means that. He said that to me before. Yeah. You know, he genuinely means that.
Yeah, ask for tickets to Old Trafford. I'll leave that one for a couple. all right, people.
Absolutely. Lovely, but what a lovely fella as well.
Lovely fella. I've got about 4 or 5 messages saying, what a great guest, speaks so well. Jerome said, top guest. Brilliant. Buzzing. Thank you very much for coming on, Ben. Nathan, I don't even have to thank you. I mean, you're part of the team now, aren't you? If you like me thanking Steve. But anyway, thank you for coming on. Steve, thank you for coming on and being my sidekick all day. Because it's been savage.
Well done.
People in the comment section, Gareth Lewis, you've been there every step of the way. He only really wanted to watch for the Ben Thornley one, but he has been here since 9 o'clock in the morning till this one here. So ratings on that one, Gareth.
Just before we go, Nathan, do you remember Ben playing?
I don't remember like how he played, but I remember him on my Panini stickers. And obviously, the players who are playing. When you're young, you don't look at the players who are not playing. But I knew the names of all the players who were in the whole squad, if you get what I mean. Because also, there was something called Championship Manager. So I used to always go into the back manager, go into settings and give myself 50 million and then start and edit the players' abilities and then look at all the players at Man United squad. So I used to remember that massively. And that's how I remembered every name, really. If you mentioned any names, I say, remember that. Because that was my team. So
it used to be a thing where if you had a poster on the wall for all the team members, you had to name all of them.
Yeah.
I used to try and make my brother name the Arsenal team. Who are they? Because I know the Man United team. I know them off by heart.
I remember the great late Nobby Stiles, and he actually said that Ben Thornley was the best out of all those.
Wow.
He was the best. He was the most. He would have
most ability.
And I hope that he's had the tackle. But I hope things like that. I hope he looks upon as like, instead
That's
of like.
Nice to hear, isn't it? Yeah.
I think it's one of them things where at the end, not the end of your career, but the end, once everything's done, once you've retired and you settled down, you're in your whatever, on your rocking chair, and you look back, it's the journey. Okay, it didn't quite go, but from that, I met these people. From that, I'm working in Man United TV. From that, I'm now doing this, and that. And eventually, you look back and you're like, boom, I can't complain because I still had a professional career.
And I was speaking, and again, like Rob, who I speak to from ESPN, he goes to all the United games, obviously, because he's the Scorers correspondent. And he said, what a guy. I asked him about Ben, and he said, one of the nicest guys you will ever meet. And he'll do anything for you. So it's just like a continuous thing of nice things and think what, that they say about him. And his career was cut short a little bit, but, if you've got all that, then it ain't too bad, is it?
No, it's not too bad. And everyone in the comment section, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Make sure you press the like and subscribe button. I may pop back on a little bit. I'm not too sure. Right now, my head is spinning. I've been looking at the computer screen for too long. So on that note, I hope you've enjoyed today. It's been a good one for me and Steve. Peace out. Can't believe you haven't dropped the fact that you were. Oh yeah. No. Oh.
What?
Yeah. So.
No, it's all right. We don't have to worry about it.
So you used to play champ. You used to play champ.
Yeah.
I'm on the front cover of. I'm on the front cover. I was the first. They had Manager Man on Football Manager.
Was that you?
I'm not the manager man. I was the first set of players to be on the front cover of a Football Manager game.
Wow.
Yep.
Where is it then?
Hold on.
Oh, He'll send you the poster and he'll put you on your wall. Oh, you've done it now, Nathan. Look.
Nah. Do you know what? To be fair, Nathan has all the hype every week. Yeah, talking about Jason Roberts and top goal scorer in the FA Cup. Making sick. My time to shine. Hold on.
I got
Here
to
he
see
goes.
that.
Yeah, he was, and he's like that.
In the goalkeeper clubs.
I can't remember now. I don't know if he was goalkeeper gloves or not. But yeah, here he comes.
All right, cheers for that, Garth. You could have given me a prep. I could have prepped this up, yeah? You could have dropped me a message earlier on. I could have run off, found the game somewhere, and brought it back on screen. Okay, hold on a second. Look, while we're here.
Anyway,
was it after Champ Manager then? It was called Football Manager, the one that came after Champ Man.
They changed the name.
Yeah. Football Manager.
Yeah. Hold on.
Done it now, Nathan.
No, don't be silly. All right. Chrome tab.
Actually, I think you sent me a picture of it.
Yeah, don't worry. I've got it up here now.
Can't believe that's not on your wall.
Well, this is my living room, so I'm not sure that I'd get away with that from the missus.
I bet it's somewhere.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah.
Here it is. See, number 15? You see that? Look at them calves. Look at that. I can't even see.
Don't mind that, lad. Don't mind that.
See it? Oh, there we go. See this? This man here, number 15. Yeah.
This is recently.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Where's your other one? You got another one, though, haven't you?
The old one.
You got another one.
Oh, yeah. What you mean? What, the inside cover?
Yeah, but you would have been too young then, wouldn't you?
You'd have
been like 12.
Oh, yeah. I mean, back then, I was playing the game. Like, I was buying Carlos Tevez when he was at Boca Juniors after seeing him at 2:00 in the morning on the Argentinian football. That's the kind of player I was.
Where's the inside cover?
Oh, Steve, this is embarrassing. Mate. Stop it.
Wow.
I didn't want to have to do
you know what? He's going to go to bed tonight, big smile in his face, like,
nah.
What computer is it for then? What's that for? What computer is it for?
It's for the PC.
Ah, okay.
Hold on.
I don't think there's any game that was as good as that game. I spent hours and hours every single day playing that game.
What's the best Football Manager game around now?
This one. Nothing touches it. Nothing ever touches this game.
Is it from Championship Manager? Is Football Manager from the makers of Championship Manager? Yeah,
so Football Manager, Sports Interactive, and Champ. So I think it's Sports Interactive went off and made Championship Football Manager, and the other people just stayed as Champ, kept the name, but everything else was rubbish about it. I'm not even sure they carried on.
They didn't carry on. That's what I mean. So Football Manager basically is
Football Manager is Champ.
Manager.
I still call it Champ.
Yeah, it is the best.
I can't find the inside cover, but that was me.
You believe a football game that didn't even let you play games, and it was so good. So you're just watching, seeing the score change, and you're happy with it.
People didn't understand. What are you watching? Because back in the day, before it was the 3D figures, it was just a flashing bar.
Yeah, words on the bar.
Just a flashing bar. Yeah. And it was like Robbie Fowler scores. Oh,
flashing
bar. Yeah. And what are you doing? This is hours. One My mate's mum and dad went away for the week. Yeah, we moved the sofa into the back room next to the laptop.
What a game!
From that spot. Oh, it's just the best game. I swear, we're gonna have to do an online
Now
one.
that other picture you got though, that is in full frontal, giving it that is old boat race and everything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll throw it in there. I'll throw it in the group.
Yeah,
I'll WhatsApp it to you. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I want to waste so much.
When you got a minute.
Yeah.
When I get time.
Anyway, as I was saying, thank you very much for joining us. Peace out. Wash your hands, people.